everybody to, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to our monthly board meeting. And if you would stand, please, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Commissioner Robinson and Commissioner Swenson have been excused from the meeting today. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Commissioner Kupila. Present. Commissioner Talcott. Present. Commissioner Kutrowitz. Here. Commissioner Humble. Present. Commissioner Warren is here. We'll move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion vote by any board member. We have approval of board minute meetings from October 30th, 2012. We have payroll checks totaling $66,595.63. We have maintenance and operations checks totaling $1,317,196.06. We have the PFC charge totaling $65,000 for approval, and we have the financial reports included in the packet for October. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have one item I just wanted to get some clarification on with regard to the financials, and that was, I noted that there was some recruiting expenses, and I didn't know, John or Maria, was that in conjunction with your recruiting, or was that something else?
In the recruiting expenses, I think that was in conjunction with your recruiting.
I was recruited.
You're the one responsible for that.
We reimbursed.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was what it was, but I noticed it was a little over, and I wasn't quite sure, so I just want to verify that. That's the only question I had. Any other questions? Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. We'll go directly to the director's report. Director Faulkner.
Great, thank you, and happy afternoon. Good to see everybody here in November. I'll pass around a presentation Jim and I made just 2 weeks ago down in Denver. It's the presentation of Frontier Airlines. Many probably saw the press releases. We'll see Frontier again this summer. We're really excited about that. They'll start May 17th, and they'll be flying an Airbus this summer with 140 seats compared to last year's 99-seat plane. So they'll be flying on the exact same schedule after several rounds of discussion with our consultant. The reason for that schedule is the banks it ties into. It ties into the Midwestern banks, which pretty much gets us from Dallas all the way over to Atlanta and then up to Detroit both ways. And then you can get to Florida in the East Coast one way and the West Coast one way. But in order to reach those big Midwestern cities, we kind of have to stick with that bank of flights that we tie into. So we did determine that was probably the best of the schedules to stick with. So they'll start on May 17th. Tickets are already on sale. We've been watching already on the Frontier website. There's already some competitive pricing out there for May. So pretty exciting stuff. We're real thrilled to see them back, and we're anxious to see the rate impact from that. But I thought, and Jim, if you feel free to comment on this too, but I really feel as though we've reach that next level with Frontier where we're in their future as long as there is a future. With any of the airlines right now, that's very tenuous. The fuel prices have them all still teetering financially, but we really felt as though next year at this time I think we'll be in a similar position to know what our future is with Frontier, and I feel like that's secure as long as we can keep the planes full.
Yeah, I guess I had a couple of takeaways that I'd like to report to the board on. One is I think they genuinely were impressed by the community support that we had in Great Falls, and the level of commitment from the chamber, from the investors in particular, and just the desire of the community. They were very interested in getting these folks to come back to Great Falls. I just have to compliment John. I think John did a tremendous job putting together a presentation which is going around here, but the point was that they were even making some notes from the presentation as I watched. Bob Westgate and Josh were in there making notes as we went around and talked about the things that were important here, and I thought that was insightful because it tells me that John really put together a good package when we went down there and talked to him, and we really hit the mark with him. And I think the other takeaway is that if we are successful this next summer with Frontier in Great Falls and come close to a reasonable rate of return for them, it would be my suspicions that I don't think we'll have to go again with a guarantee. I think they want to give it 2 years, see how the community and the region reacts to the Airbus, and then it would be my impression at least that if it's successful and we do a good job like we did this year, that probably will go away. I'm not sure that the guarantee will go away, but I think maybe the pledging of the money will go away. It's just hard to know because it's such a changing environment. But you know, there's no question that the fact that Billings lost Frontier and we're still retaining Frontier, I think says fathom for their belief at least that that it's going to be a successful year next year for them here, and they see the bigger picture that we're drawing from Canada, and they get that, they understand that, and I think that was a big piece of why they decided they'd come back. So John, thanks for your work on it. JC?
Have you seen the airline ticket prices rise since they've quit?
We haven't a lot. I mean, they are certainly up some. You know, Denver, for example, you can't find as many of the 350 fares. Although what I've seen now is Alaska, for example, just today I looked, and they've come in and put sales on some of those markets that Frontier was in. And those two have had an interesting pairing in the last couple of years where Frontier has begun to move into some of their markets like Portland and Seattle out of Colorado Springs. And then Alaska has reciprocated by trying to steal traffic off of traditional Frontier routes. So I think what we're seeing now is kind of an interesting approach by Alaska to try and head off some of that demand. They're offering Denver right now for around $356 round trip. And of course that would require a trip to Seattle, but nonetheless it's still pricing pressure, which we like to see. So when we checked it about a month ago, or maybe it's been 45 days ago, our pricing was comparable with Billings. Bozeman was a little better, and we beat Missoula and Kalispell on every route we looked at. So you know, I think we've gotten the pricing pressure we were looking for.
Ben?
I don't know about the other lanes, but Kansas City out of here, when Frontier quit, the prices went back up to, I believe, around $700, where this summer when Frontier was here, they were around $450, I think, when I went to Kansas City. So there are certain lanes where they were predominant on have increased out of here again.
And that's what we would expect. You know, we didn't check all the markets. What we looked for, I think when we did our market comparison, were Dallas, DC, LA, and I can't remember what the fourth one was, but of our top 5 markets or so, Kansas City's probably a top 20 market. You know, it's probably around 15 or maybe even a little higher, maybe 12 or so. But of the markets that we normally watch, you know, I mean, compared to the others in the state, you know, we're definitely right in the mix. Where a year or two ago, you know, we were well outside the mix, at least a $35 premium.
One postscript to our meeting. Dwight, you find this interesting. I think one of the best parts of the presentation was that we had a tug up here that would handle it.
Thank you for that picture. Yeah.
No, I mean, they brought it up 3-4 times.
They did.
They got that tug. That tug's there. That's great. That's really great. They got that tug.
So if I can, I'm really curious as to why they're not servicing Billings going forward. Did Billings do something wrong?
No, they. What it is
the market's so much larger than Great Falls.
Well, it is, but it's also very close to Bozeman, and they don't have a summer tourism season, so it's an airplane availability issue. Billings is served by the regional jets, the Embraer 190s, And they got rid of the Embraer 190s. They've been pulled out of the Frontier fleet effective January 1. And in fact, those airplanes are actually coming back to Great Falls as casino charters throughout the spring. So what it is, it's back to fuel pricing. The airlines are desperate to do away with regional jets, and because of the fuel inefficiency. And so, you know, as those were loaded into the Frontier schedule, it gave that airline a connecting presence they never had before. And they did that big expansion back in 2006 and 7, where they added a lot of Montana towns, and they added towns throughout the West. And and since then, with the fuel prices rising, they first dropped the Q400, then they dropped the 50-seat regional jets out of Milwaukee, and then the 70s. And that's what kept happening to us is we were targeting, because we're a small market, the smallest of those airplanes, and the size of the airplane just continued to graduate. And I really think it's fortunate for us that we grabbed onto last year to make our aggressive move, because I honestly think that appears to have been the last slot.
I think we did. I think we really got right at the tail end of this deal.
Yeah, because they have just enough capacity now where they want to do some winter routes like Palm Springs, but they're looking for a strong summer route to offset it. And that fits us right now. Our hope is over the next few years, as a permanent home for Frontier is found, and that route and that fleet begins to expand again, we can grow ourselves into a full-time market. But you know, from everything I see so far, it looked as though Missoula was going to get our flight this year. I don't see any announcement of Missoula, and that was supposed to have been made by Thanksgiving. So it appears as though the only markets that will have Frontier this summer are us and Bozeman. There may be some time yet. They might have a city fall out, and Missoula would still be in the mix. But you know, it looks as though we may, just the two of us, may have service this summer. So. I think we really got lucky with the timing, because had we waited any longer, you know, we would have gotten locked out for certain.
Was it a surprise that they announced this quickly?
I was very surprised. I had given them a heads up.
We almost fell off the chairs.
Yeah.
And then
I had given them a heads up, you know, before we talked to the investors, just to say this is what I think everyone will support. And you know, we were shocked when we got done to the end of the meeting, and they, you know, they kind of cautioned us some with, you've got to do better in September, but we want to try again. And you know, and in fact, you know, we had made a point of saying, even when I talked to them several weeks ago, it'd be great to get the tickets on sale earlier to give us more time to market. And they'd even made a point of arranging for that. So we were pretty stunned.
yeah,
They made up their mind before you showed up?
yep,
Yeah, I think they did.
yeah, they really did. We'd love to say that we went in there. And
Yeah,
twisted
nice
their arm.
presentation,
Yeah.
but.
No, they had made that decision, and like John said, I mean, we walked out of there, and I looked at John and said, did I hear what I thought I heard?
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd made the decision, and it was kind of interesting. It was mainly the presentation was academic,
Yeah.
so.
I think Canadian traffic come up.
Yeah, everything.
It was
Okay.
good.
I see in that presentation, you talked about losing 13 Allegiant flights. Was that last year? Or was that
That's this upcoming year yet.
This is upcoming.
Yeah. In talking to Allegiant, they're going to rationalize their Phoenix routes. They want to get higher load factors. They're targeting above 95%, which will be remarkable if they can do it. But they're going to cut back Phoenix flying this next year for a lot of markets. So we're seeing a decrease of, I think I've figured 6,000 seats coming up this spring. And our hope is we can offset that with some leakage that we attract from other markets.
If they're flying, say, 80% now on 2 airplanes, and they cut back to 1, at 100%, they're still going to lose 60% of their traveling public. So what's
They want to drive the
They go
pricing
bigger.
up too. You know, that's their other goal. So they're just going to rationalize that route in Phoenix to try and get better yield and fuller planes.
they're not going to go to bigger aircraft?
Not
Well,
yet.
they
They
are
bought some
gonna
319s.
Phase into the 390.
But it looks like, I've heard 2 things. I've heard that those might end up in a California market. I think what's more likely is they'll end up in Florida initially. So we probably won't see any of those for a while. But they are talking about route expansion next year. You know, I don't think things are going particularly well in Los Angeles, which is, you know, the market they just shut down. In fact, the last flights were just in the last 2 weeks. But they are talking about maybe some expansion for us, maybe Oakland or some other California market. The only thing is, I don't think that the intent is there. I don't think the business negotiations with the airports have advanced yet to the point where they match the intent. So I think I'm a little skeptical that they'll be able to pull that off for next year. So we may have it in a downturn in Allegiant, which would take us back to 2010 levels. It's not as though, or 2011 levels. It's not as though they're dramatically decreasing anything. Last year was a massive increase in the amount of scheduled to Phoenix.
Ben?
Yeah, getting back to Frontier, they're gonna go to a 140-seat plane. What's their load factor for break even then? Is it 70%, 80%?
I think it's in that presentation, I think we estimated it around 78%.
78%.
Yeah, it does drop because that airplane is more efficient per seat miles.
Well, we still got our work cut out for us, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly May and September will be a very, very difficult challenge.
Yeah, well.
On to other information, we through October, we've boarded about 160,000 passengers out of GTF. Already through October, this is our second busiest year ever. By the time we get the November numbers, we expect we'll be into a record year, and December will push us well above record capacity. So a difficult time to do construction, but nonetheless, we're managing just fine. So far, it seems as though the lines are holding up, and we'll be able to get through this year without a major difficulty from the construction. Once we get into January and February, traffic drops off pretty dramatically. March and April are somewhat normal months, but then hopefully we'll be into our new checkpoint around the July timeframe as the big summer volumes really start to flow. So a very good year passenger-wise. We expect it will be a record year. In fact, we might even have that record when we get the November numbers in the next couple of weeks. RSIP, we did receive 3 firms that are interested in helping us to update our noise exposure maps. As we mentioned last month's meeting, that is a normal scheduled process. It's about a 10-year cycle. We're at that a little further than that right now in terms of the last time it was updated. And so we'll be conducting some interviews on the 10th and 11th of firms that are interested in doing the NEM update for us. We have 3 companies that we chose to interview all 3. And we'll be sending them some information this week with a schedule and some questions and what to prepare for on those interview days. We have a panel of staff and then JC representing the board on the selection panel for those interviews. Construction activity, as you saw today, the restaurant seating is nearly complete. They've got to put the handrails on, and that'll be pretty much the end of that piece of it. The gift shop should be moved in the next couple of weeks. The new playroom, which will be inside security, will be the temporary home of the gift shop for the next 8 or 9 months until we get the final location ready. Air Host had indicated they wanted to try and keep that open during the construction, and so we told them at their cost, if they wanted to move the things over there, they could use that space because it's very easy to convert that into the permanent area when we're done. So that'll be moving the next couple of weeks. The new lobby bathrooms also will open probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. I just looked at them today, and they're installing fixtures. Looks like the tiling's done, and we're getting real close to getting those open. At that point, the existing bathrooms will close, which will give the contractor the entire back of the building there once they get the gift shop moved, and then they can begin opening up the back to the outside. Steel assembly is well underway. They're out into the 3rd row of beams now. They're actually putting up the curved skeleton today for the new restaurant, and that's looking terrific. It won't be long before they'll be enclosing that and getting us weather tight again. Then the last thing I'm just going to remind everyone is we have this Christmas party scheduled for December 13th. It's a Thursday, and what time are we starting, did we say?
5:30.
5:30. Here at the airport, obviously. It looks as though we may have 1 or 2 business items, fairly quick business items for a December meeting, rather than conduct a separate meeting as we've done the last 2 years. I was thinking we might schedule the board meeting for maybe even 5 or 4:30 on the 13th, and do a quick meeting before we adjourn to the Christmas party, if the board's willing to do so.
Does anybody have any problems with having a short business meeting?
I do because I chair the outcomes committee for benefits
And you're not
at
gonna be here.
4:30 that day.
Okay.
Okay. Will you
So I
make it to
couldn't
the
be
party?
It depends because I don't get done with my committee meeting until around 7.
Are we absolutely locked in on that date?
Pretty locked, I mean, we can move it to other.
We could maybe change the
during the
time.
week.
We could try that. No,
Oh.
Helen would care about that.
The time can be changed and if we're during the week, we have open.
Yeah, please don't.
Well, I kind of
change
have
it,
a
just-
conflict myself, but I mean, I've made a commitment I would be here, but I just didn't know if we had any flexibility or not on that. Let's just leave it as it is and we'll shoot for, unless you have any other thoughts on that.
Well, certainly the time would be easy to change. Would that help, or are you better?
It won't make any difference for me. I'm just thinking maybe for Susan. That'll be her last meeting
Meeting?
to be with us.
We could see if Helen has any other time, any other days.
Well, I mean, we could push it back to that Wednesday, the 12th. Right, I mean, the day before, or.
Would that work for you?
That works fine for me.
Do you think that would work?
We can certainly ask if the room's
Okay.
available.
Okay.
During the week, it's. pretty
Typically,
open.
yeah, there aren't many
Yeah.
Christmas
The
parties
Thursday,
during
If
the
we
You
can move
could, you could keep your Christmas party the same if you could change, you know.
The cocktail hour, that's the one that.
Well, I'm thinking if we could just combine them, that avoids having to come up a
Right.
second time.
Let's
Well,
try
let's
for the
see about
12th.
moving
That
them.
12th would really work good if we could do that.
Okay.
If that works,
folks
yeah,
would-
please don't go to.
So let's do that, and let's give ourselves, how long are we gonna need, a half an hour?
I think a half an hour.
So if we're gonna start at 5:30, let's just set it for 5 o'clock for
Yeah,
the
that's
board
what- that's
meeting, and
what
we
I
just
think.
need to notice it,
Okay.
Okay.
yeah,
All right, so we'll shoot for the 12th then.
okay?
I'll keep
Good.
that open.
Anybody have any objections to that on the board? Does that work? Okay.
And that's all I have on the, I'm sorry, one other thing I should pass around. This is the updated terminal budget that we've been presenting every month. Might get around. We did have some additional change orders in the month of November, approximately $6,000 worth of change orders. And so our totals so far in terms of change orders, about $40,000, about 0.8% of the bid price in change orders. And of course, we had our additional budget testing, our owner testing that we added to the budget for another $49,000. So of the $440,000 we set aside for soft costs and contingency, we will have spent about $93,000 through the end of November of those dollars. Nothing else changed on the project budget or the funding plan.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? All right, anything else on your report?
That is it.
Thank you. We'll go to the only item that we actually have for action today, and that is the terminal seating RFP. And John, do you want to talk to us about that?
Sure. We had two bids for the terminal seating RFP. There was a fairly substantial cost differential between the two, as we reported last month. Based on that, we selected Arcanus, and we did ask for multiple quantities on the bid to determine how many seats we wanted. We're currently recommending that we buy 150 seats, and that would give us 100 for the Allegiant hold room and 50 for the new hold room next to Delta, which would be a combined hold room for the 150 seats. That would give us about, or that would cost about $63,000, including assembly and arms for all the chairs. We set aside about $150,000 out of the original project budget for furniture, fixtures, and equipment that we were going to buy directly. So we'll have a remaining $86,000. We have several items that we need to buy yet out of that money. We've got restaurant seating for the new restaurant that we need to buy. We have a little bit of restaurant equipment that we had planned to buy in terms of the actual equipment that we used in the restaurant. And then soft seating for the fireplace lounge, which shouldn't be a very big item, a couple of couches and a couple of chairs. And we've yet to determine where we want to source that from yet. But we have some, we're working with AirHost on terminal seating, or on restaurant seating. They have some vendors that they've used in the past that they have a fairly big category that catalog that we can look at for new restaurant seating. So we're recommending that we would spend $63,000 on new terminal seats for the Allegiant and new hold room, leaving us about $87,000 for the remaining items to be purchased out of furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Okay, I've got a couple questions, but let's go ahead and put a motion on the table here. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Just a question, John, I noticed in this board agenda item handout here on the seating, there's two different, looks like two different items here from Arconis. What's the difference between those two?
It's the quantities. The first, what we had asked for, we had put in several different quantities in the bid to see what kind of volume discount we would get.
Oh, I see.
And so we have 100, what we're recommending is 150 seats. Ideally, we'd like to get 200 seats because the old seats that are down in the United hold room are those old kind of bucket seats.
Oh, I see.
We'd like to do away with those. There's about 50 of them down there, and with that Airbus coming this summer, we'll probably be using those every day during a Frontier flight. But just from a budget perspective, you know, the extra $20,000 right now, we didn't feel like we had it. You know, we can always go back and buy more seats in the future. We preferred to try and get what we needed, and then at some point.
I was looking at the two line items, and they both say 150 seats, but then I see you got 200 over here and 150 there.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that's why I was a little
Typo
confused
there.
about that. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I have the fabric that we selected, pass around too. This is a sample of the fabric.
And then
Grade A vinyl.
and the other question I had was, in relation to the total budget that you have with the remaining 86,000 available, does that seem reasonable to cover the remaining items?
I think so. You know, we have the restaurant seating, which will be the biggest of those items, and like I said, the soft seating in the terminal, we don't expect to spend a whole lot of money on that, a couple $1,000s. The restaurant seating will be where the majority of those dollars will be spent.
Assuming the soft seating for the fireplace could be local.
Right, and that's kind of what we're thinking is we buy it, you know, just probably from a furniture store. There are some industrial makers. We want to kind of look and see if we can find anything like you would find at the hospital that's a little sturdier, but you pay for that too. And so the question is, you know, if we had just basic seating, is that something that would hold up long enough in a commercial setting like ours or not?
JC?
I have two questions. Looking through the recommended purchase, then over on this final sheet, there was $4,000 for shipping, and it doesn't appear to be in the base dollar amount recommended. You've got, let's see here. We've recommended 63,000 for the seats.
Oh, I see what
Then
you're
on this
saying.
other sheet, it says 4,000 for shipping, so it raises it, or raises it.
No, I
to
think you're right.
67.
I think we did leave that out because the base bid doesn't include shipping.
And the other thing is the material, if we don't buy all the seats now, the material will still be available in the future so that we can match.
I would hope, because, you know, typically they keep some of that stuff back so that when you tear a seat, you can get them reupholstered. You know, that's a good question on this, because based on regular business hour running here, I think that does actually include the,
On the base.
on the base.
150.
Yeah,
If we added more.
if you look at the first sheet there of the base bid plus the alternative bid plus the alternative bid, if you look down at the very bottom, it says assembly price per seat $40 based on regular business hours, non-union labor, on-site delivery and assembly. So I think the $58.50 does include the shipping. And what we asked them for on the second one is for the however many seats that is. What is it? It's the 200 seats. So the first sheet is the bid sheet. The second sheet is their actual quote on 200 seats.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, ties back. Okay, does that answer your question, JC?
I guess.
Well, see, it does tie back, because you get the $40 there per seat assembly, and then it does say it includes.
They quoted it different between the two sheets.
Yeah, good, that was a good question. Good. Did you have another question?
No, that was
That was it.
just that material.
Okay, any other questions on the motion? Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, Airport Authority Board comments. Commissioner Trapila,
None, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Talcott.
Nice job on Frontier. That's just great. And,
We're excited.
yeah, very cool.
Reason to be.
That's my only comment.
That's positive, thank you. Jason? Susan?
None.
I have none. Public comment? Any public comment? Nothing? Happy Thanksgiving? Nothing? All right. Seeing none, then we will adjourn this meeting, and because we have such a short agenda, we're going to move right to the work session. We're going to lose Commissioner Talcott shortly, so I'd like to just move right to the work session if we could. And as far as roll call, again, all are present except Commissioner Swenson and Commissioner Robinson.
Ready to go ahead, Jim?
Yes, I am. Okay, so we're call this meeting to order, and let's talk about item number one, our infamous Galt building.
Yes, you may recall we have the Galt building over at, there next to the guards front gate. There was an Army Reserve building built in the 50s and abandoned last spring. We're still in disagreement with the Army Reserve about how that lease reads and the disposition of the assets. In the meantime, the Mang folks have expressed concern and reservations about the reuse of that site because it is immediately adjacent to their gate, and they actually share a security fence on 3 sides. And their concern mainly emanates from the fact that if we lease that facility out to someone, they have no control over who or what would share that gate with them. And so in their last couple of months since this building's been abandoned, they've been pursuing the potential addition of that site to their lease. We did receive a letter from them in the last couple of weeks, which we've drafted a response to. They have not obviously been sent this response yet. I just drafted it last week after, right before the holiday. And we plan to tell them that we are agreeable to those discussions. They need that in order to move that forward in their discussions in Washington to see if they can get approval to get the site. The only 2 things that they've mentioned to us they might have interest in doing on the site are, number one, just to secure the area for additional parking, because it does abut their main parking lot where they have had some parking constraints in the past. And then number 2, potentially some wind power on that site. It is directly in line with the air traffic control tower on one corner of the runway, and with the water tower on the other corner. It basically forms an L, with that being on the connecting part of the 2 lines if we put a higher obstruction there. So of the locations that we've discussed in the past, we think that's probably the better of the locations for a higher wind tower if we were to allow it. What we've told them in the draft letter is we're interested in continuing those discussions with them. The one stipulation would be if they did get control of the site, they would have to take responsibility for the building and tear it down at some point in time when they would be ready to do it. Ideally, what we would push to do would be try to get the Department of Defense to transfer that asset directly from Mang to, or from the Department of the Army to Mang, so we don't enter into the ownership chain for any future liability with the hazardous materials that are in the site. Separately, we've prepared a letter in the last week to the Department of the Army to document the environmental concerns that are in the building currently and ask that they address those. Some of those are as simple as providing us additional documentation. Others of them they actually have to clean up. We're hoping to get that letter. It's actually with Mick right now. We're hoping to get that letter out later this week. But in the interim, what we would like to do, and what we told the Mang folks we would do, is bring this to the board to get permission to negotiate an amendment to the lease at no cost to add this land to their lease, assuming they would take responsibility for the building.
And I guess the only concern, again, and I think you've addressed it, is that we just don't want any contingent liability coming back to the airport authority on this one.
And I think that's a fair request. The Department of Defense built, constructed, and brought all those hazardous materials onto the site. The records indicate it was a plowed field before they took over the site. All we're asking them to do is transfer it from the Army Reserve over to the Guard Bureau. That seems like a reasonable request. We may have to employ political means to get that done, but I think that would be in the authority's best interest to do so that we never enter into the ownership change of those hazardous materials.
And maybe I missed it, has the Guard Bureau commented on that?
We've discussed it loosely, and they haven't. I think it's a base level right now, and they'll probably take this letter, which I would intend to give them in draft form until the meeting on the 12th or 13th, depending on when we meet next, and tell them this would be the board's intent that they would act on the 12th. You can share that with the Guard Bureau to make sure they don't have any reservations with that, but I can't see how they would have major reservations. I mean, it's a typical DOD type of facility, so they're used to dealing with these types of hazardous materials in their facilities.
Do you see anything coming out of here that's going to require any formal action on the board?
I think yes. I think there's potential that shortly after the beginning of the year, if this were approved by the Guard Bureau, we would be amending the lease to make this change to the lease.
Okay. Any comments?
Just as long as we don't end up with the liability of that building. If either the Army takes the liability or Guard takes it, fine. But if they're unwilling to take it, I don't think we can approve a leasing until we're going to have to hold on to it and force the Army to clean it up.
I think that's probably right.
Any other thoughts? Okay, and you're not asking to move this to any, or you are
Yeah,
asking to
we
you
would
wanna
like to move this to the December
January?
agenda.
Or the
Well, actually, the
December?
December agenda,
Okay.
whenever we would have that meeting.
All right, so without objection, we'll move it to the board meeting. Okay, item number 2, the Republic parking proposal that is included in the package.
Over the last couple of months, we've been working with Republic Parking to address some concerns we have with the parking lot. That's no new concerns there. It's just that with the additional capacity that we've been putting through that lot, there are some limitations to the exit lane. We have 2 exit pay machines right now, or we have 3 actually. Two that are capable of being manned, and 1 is an unmanned cash machine. The problem becomes there's a bottleneck right at the exit. As you try to exit that lane, 2 or 3 cars will back up all 3 of the exit lanes to where you can't get through. When we moved the employee lot last year, the employees used to enter that lot adjacent to the toll booth exits in 2 lanes that exist today. And so what we've talked about with Republic would be to cut through that median in order to make a discrete exit lane for the credit card machine, so that you can pay automatically via that lane. And then to put a canopy over all 3 lanes to block some of the weather, to make the availability of that auto pay station a little better, and to increase the visibility of the toll station. If you're in the parking lot today, as you know, in the wintertime, in particular, a lot of pickup trucks, it's very difficult to see where the toll plaza is. With a canopy up over top of that with some lights on it, and maybe even lighted lane signs that tell people open, credit card only, that type of information, it's going to get people to that exit much easier. And so what we've come up with is a work plan of about $126,000 that Republic is willing to do in exchange for a 4-year extension. Our parking contract is very competitive with the other ones in the state. I think it's a good contract for us in general. We all anticipate next year we will probably get to the highest level of the revenue sharing, which we keep almost all the dollars once we get above $1.2 million in the waterfall of how that contract works. So we think our compensation will be going up. And the other thing we talked to them about is we wanted to increase the monthly guarantee that we get from the parking lot operator, because what happens is they pay us a monthly fee, and then at the end of the year we settle up based on that graduated scale. And it had been many years since we had not had a fairly large settlement at the end of the year. Well, obviously we'd like to have that money earlier. So what they've agreed to do is increase the monthly amount by 20%. So that instead of getting $33,333, and I think even pay the 33 cents if I'm not mistaken, we'll get an even $40,000 per month. That'll come to us every month, and at the end of the year the settlement will be that much smaller. So we're getting use of our capital sooner. We think it's a very competitive way to get these improvements done. Obviously the other alternative would be to wait and fund it ourselves. There's certainly something to be said for that. and then let the contract expire and rebid it. Commercially, I don't think we do much better than we have right now with the contract that we have, but they are willing to reinvest for that 4-year extension. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Laura? Laura's been doing a lot of dealing.
No, I think you've got it.
Okay. So any questions from the board on this? Okay, JC?
Reading through this original proposal, they wanted a 5-year extension. Why not?
Well, the main reason was we feel that 4 years was more than enough to compensate them for their investment of capital. At the end of the contract, we would probably rebid again, and we would require another capital influx. The next time around, we'll probably go for a revenue system. The system we have is older. It doesn't have a whole lot of online capability or anything like that that we can use to monitor the parking operation. It's functional, and I don't think it needs to be immediately addressed, but by the time we get 4 or 5 years down the road, it's all tied together with the ticket reader, the actual gate arm, the software that runs the cash register and everything needs to go at once. That's probably a $250,000 capital expense at a minimum, maybe even a little higher than that. We would put that out with a 10-year bid and say, parking operator, you must do this, within a year of taking over the contract, and then you'd have the contract. So we're just kind of, we didn't want to extend out any further than we had to amortize these improvements. Laura and I had pushed pretty hard for a 3-year extension. They really felt as though the capital expenses justified a 5-year, and we did get them to settle on 4 years, which we agreed to only if they would increase the MAG. So it was just a negotiated agreement.
Okay, everything that I looked at looked really good. It looks logical and would make everything clearer and more efficient. In expanding the parking lot in the last available area out there, you use about 2/3 of it. Why not use all of it?
To go out and get that other third?
Yeah, that other,
we will
only
definitely,
another dozen spaces or something.
yeah, we would get, I think we said 23.
Yeah, a little more than that.
When we looked at it on a price per stall, the price per stall was substantially higher than the initial ones because of the grading there. There was an additional manhole that had to go in order to pick up that area, to pick up the flow. And so we bailed out, we had that in there as an option on the United Material contract last year. And so far demand-wise, it looks like we picked it about right. Last week we were into that expansion area, but there were plenty of empty stalls. And even with snow removal, that big storm we had plenty of places to put the snow without taking up too much parking. So I think we've probably got another 2 or 3 years before we'd have to go in and pick up that last piece. But it was simply a calculation of price per stall. We thought it was a little rich and decided not to do it. We have one other way we can pick up almost 30 stalls by going into the lot. There's an extra wide island that's much wider than the other islands at this end of the terminal. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but on most of the islands, people park on both sides. Whenever they designed this, for some reason, they built the island really wide and people would park on one side. So we looked at it last year with our engineer, and we think we can go in there and cut that island out, double load it, and pick up another 30 stalls. So we still have about 55, 60 stalls out there that we can put in place before we have to get very creative about the next round of parking. We have a plan for that. No, not that. The next plan would be to begin to move into the water tower lot with some type of economy product. Probably a $3 a day, maybe even gravel lot that we would only open during overflow conditions and let people self-select into cheaper parking. But we think we're probably still 5 years or more off from that.
Brett?
Is it just me, or does it seem like the exit to the parking lot was an afterthought? I mean, it's pretty convenient for about 40 stalls that are right over there in line, but the rest of the parking lot is, you do need an exit sign to find it because it's not the logical place to put an exit to your parking lot. should that be considered now, or should it be considered later? Because this is, I mean, I'm just looking at this, you know, that little island on the exit, existing exit design. And I guess there's the next one that shows, well, on either one of them. But you've got that little basic along the proposed one. What? So you're making people circle all the way around?
Yeah, we're trying to set it up, you know, which you would typically see in a parking lot, because the problem you've got now is people try to make that movement across people that are waiting in line. And what we want to do is cue them back around to the, you know, to the end of the line, and then make the line wider by adding that third lane, so that there is now discrete flow clear over into that self-pay station. But yeah, that was the idea, was to get them to the queue at the end of the line, rather than wait there and try to get in between somebody that's already there, you know, trying to get out. Yeah, it is a clumsy design, and I think the long-term solution, as we get into master planning, would be to think about taking the exit road around the water tower the other way. You know, so in other words, coming into the airport, you would have all of the existing lanes, entry lanes, that go behind the parking lot, and then the exit lanes would exit behind the water tower and would kind of merge into the roadway close to the petting zoo for the airplanes, the old Mang petting zoo there. I think that's probably the point at which you could move that toll plaza out where the lanes are today to get enough space to actually to make it a better toll exit.
I don't think you're going to make any friends by doing this. I mean, really, I mean, this is almost like a maze. Can I get myself out of this parking lot? You know, and it's probably easier from a helicopter looking down. This isn't, to me, this isn't natural at all. To first find your way to it, and you're going to be about 50 feet from, or 100 feet from Payne to get out of there, and then you go, how do I get there? Let me see. I head back to the terminal, and then I take a left, and I take another left, and then I get in line there. The only ones that it's really going to be convenient to is the old employee parking lot, which I guess will obviously fill up first, because that's going to be the, you know, then you'll know how to get out of the parking lot anyway.
Well, and that's the, you know, we definitely need to do better exit signing too on the pane on the ground. I mean, to me, it's fairly intuitive if you get in the main circulation pattern in the middle. There's that one row that cuts all the way across the middle, you know, which is where we should be directing people to try and get out at. It's actually the one that funnels down to. You're going to get a number of people that come down and try to, like I said, try to go to the toll plaza that way. You know, at the top of the toll plaza, what we need them to do is to get to the middle. We got to get everybody to go to the middle. And you know, it is not uncommon for the exit to be at the middle in a airport parking lot like that, where you get everybody in the middle and then the queue comes back around the side. But it is not a great situation. We don't have a lot of room over there. The question is, what would you do to make more room? We've looked at that several times, and until you can move that toll plaza away from the parking lot more, you're kind of hampered in doing that, and you're limited today by the fact that even after you get out of the toll plaza, you've got to stack cars to get out of the...
How big is the stack?
Out of the lock. I think we figured you can get 3 or 4 cars in there. You mean after the gate arm? Mm-hmm. Once the gate arm's up, it looks to us like you can get 2 or 3 cars at least in that area that have to take that left.